welcome to the Popcorn Junkies.
Hiya.
Just to explain, we can see my mum, but my mother can't see us.
No, so
she's not seeing me do that.
No, I can't see him making all his rude gestures.
Yeah, rude gestures and looking perplexed. Okay, so we are reviewing the film Tar, starring Cate Blanchett.
Yes.
Directed by Todd Field. What do you know about Todd Field?
Well, as I suppose a lot of people, I knew nothing before I went and thought, who the hell is this Todd Field? Yeah. Turns out he made 2 films in the last 15 years.
Yeah, and both of which have been Oscar sort of, worthy, whether it be for script, actors, or I think he was nominated for directing. It principally stars Cate Blanchett. I mean, all the supporting cast, I don't really know, apart from Allan Corduner.
No, I was watching it thinking, oh my God, this is Mark's man from the Nigel Slater days.
Yeah. He's ever such a sweetie. This is a film that actively seeks to sort of blur the boundaries between a fictional representation of a conductor versus a sort of, autobiographical or factual portrayal of a real conductor. And what I mean by that is, I think it actively seeks to blur the boundaries. So it's a film about a conductor. It's a film about a conductor or a conductress. I don't know if you call them that. She's gay. She's at the top of her game.
There's nothing gay about her, mate.
There's nothing gay about her, but she is gay.
She's lesbian, yeah.
She's a lesbian. She is in a relationship with the lead violinist or first violinist. I don't know. I think that's what they call them. She's incredibly austere and kind of self-aggrandizing. She takes herself very seriously.
Yeah, driven.
Incredibly sort of severe in her knowledge of music.
I mean, the first bit of the film, which is like about a half an hour interview with a real guy. The only reason I'm saying that is she's one of these people that subscribed to the is it EGOT, Emmy, Grammys.
Oh yeah, she's won an Emmy, a Grammy, an Oscar, and a Tony,
which is very rare in the whole sort of world. And I was just looking at some of my notes, and I've put her nightmare is not staying in control of her own image. Yeah, would you agree with that?
A public image, yeah, absolutely. And really, this is a portrait of the unravelling of a major talent whose personality, as I was saying, I think in the Weekly Rush, she's not a likeable character. And I'm always drawn to films or intrigued by films in which you don't have a likeable character. And I'm just going to use one example of where I thought it worked really well was in Uncut Gems, thoroughly unlikable character at the centre.
Yes, exactly. And something I read somewhere said that it equated her with him, Adam Sandler, and also in the power of her performance and the utter believability of an unpleasant character.
Right.
And also, proud for you, Daniel Day-Lewis in There Will Be Blood.
Oh, There Will Be Blood, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, nearly every one of Daniel Day-Lewis's performances could be classed like that. It's shot in an incredibly sort of... It's very monochrome, it's very dark colours, it's very there's very little camera movement, it's incredibly slow and measured. We start with this great long opening scene. How did you feel about the film in that opening scene?
Yeah, well, what I felt was, and it was a proper interview. I mean, you could be forgiven for thinking she was absolutely real. He was absolutely real. And it went on, and I started off fine, and then as it went on and on, I started to think, are we verging pretentiousness here? Where are we going with this? How long can we sit here watching this without being given anything else at all? And then I really didn't know what I felt by the end. I wasn't bored, but being bored was the one thing I wasn't. I was sort of, and then it moves straight on to a very long teaching sequence, doesn't it? So he gives us not sort of easy pieces to deal with at the beginning, I think.
I found the first 5 minutes of the first scene interesting, and then I found the next 20 minutes insufferable.
Oh, did you?
I mean, really insufferable. Because I think however you present almost a sort of, a talk and an interview on a stage in front of a whole host of academic musicians with an academic conductor, and you present it in a sort of as straight way without any real consideration for drama or, yes, you're getting a huge character portrait. Yeah. But nothing about her character portrait did I find particularly radical. I just thought this is a committed artist talking about her work. I got everything she said. I understood everything she was saying. But it didn't engage me at all, that opening scene.
No,
and I wasn't intrigued.
No, I was very slightly, but only very slightly. Quite a few people are saying that if one likes this film, you have to see it more than once. And the only reason I'm saying that is that I haven't, I've only seen it once, obviously, but I started to think, when I was thinking about it, when I knew we were doing this review, she started to give us clues to her personality in that first interview in terms of the way she was answering him. But of course, we didn't know anything about her then, so how could we have known that?
And then you're right, we go to this scene where there's a very tense discussion that kind of pivots around not only race, but also gender identity.
Yeah.
And she's incredibly dismissive, and she's talking about the fact that you shouldn't use your own sort of identity to judge a work of music and all that kind of stuff. So, I thought that was interesting, and I thought that was intriguing. And she was taking it was interesting that, they parked within a lesbian character, her taking a swipe at a sort of multiplicity of POVs and, gender identities and all that kind of stuff. I thought that was interesting. For me, that was one of the most interesting scenes, was the conflict with the student.
Oh, okay. She's arguing her case, isn't she, and getting more and more sort of fierce. One of her lines is, "The architecture of your soul appears to be social media," to the guy before he walks out, which I think is a brilliant line. But yeah, I mean, I liked the film had got me by then, by the end of that.
Well, the film kind of got me at that point, and then I mean, I think I'm going to have to come off the fence here. I found Cate Blanchett utterly intolerable throughout this film.
No.
I found her absolutely ghastly.
What do you mean?
Well, what I mean by that is she's become the most mannered actress I have ever come across in my life. It's a huge disappointment, because I've always in the past loved her. Everyone, I think this is just for me, I really worry that this is one of those films where the critics have all run towards it because they feel it ought to be so meaningful and so pregnant with importance and such a sort of deep and intricate and nuanced character portrait. And I thought it was a really blunt, badly told, boringly executed, terribly structured, and horrendously performed film. I hated every single minute of it. Apart from where actually in the 15 minutes prior to the farcical ending of her being in Vietnam, performing at, I presume, what was some kind of Comic-Con. I found,
that wasn't important.
But it was utterly ludicrous. And even the film's main premise, which was this, the collision of creativity, ego, narcissism, and the #MeToo concept. Why the fuck are they parking a #MeToo concept within a lesbian conductor? Why go for the most rarefied individual or type of individual, I hate to use that phrase, a lesbian conductor, who would be the least likely person to do this in a world of masculine misogyny? It struck me as bizarre. I sat there, I never used the word pretentious, and this was so pretentious. I was sweating with embarrassment.
No.
Yeah, it was.
Well, the word pretentious did come into my head in the first 15 minutes, but it didn't after that. But it was her that got me. She absolutely got me after that.
And lots of, obviously, I am swimming against the stream here. There were scenes where she was sat at tables, and if she looked out of a window at a non-specific thing in the distance as she was performing, the fact that she was an executive producer really, really worries me, because this felt like a film which was so self-indulgent, so enamored with its own so-called complexity. I didn't even feel that, there was that sort of towards it. There was a 15-minute moment before the final scene of her sitting before the board and being found, having kind of broken the code and having essentially been grooming people. I got no sense of the severity of what it was she had done.
So we didn't have to.
No, you might not have had to, but it meant I didn't care. And so the consequences of it didn't resonate for me at all, because I didn't have any sense of the strength of what she'd done. She was,
What about her? But surely you could tell the strength of what she'd done by her relationship with her wife and the girl that she let go because she wasn't doing. Yeah. She was. What about their performances?
It was bland. It wasn't dramatic. It was not dramatic. I mean, it's weird. I've had a look online, and there are a few critics. I think someone at the Observer said it seems to be chiming along the same. This is a bloated piece of self-indulgent pretentiousness, and I am all for. I was all for a Black Swan-esque exploration of a woman swirling through her creativity, swirling through what it meant to be at the top of her game within not an industry, but within an artistic sector which adored her, and the way they all said, maestro, maestro. For example, small example, I'm an enormous fan of Allan Corduner. That scene was directed appallingly.
Yeah, no, I'd give you that. I mean, there were some scenes that he really wasn't interested in directing at all.
It was awful. He sat the camera back and just let it fold. Sort of 30 yards away.
You had to be absolutely wowed by her. If you weren't, then the whole film would have been a disaster, which it sounds like it was with you.
When I saw the trailer, I thought what we were going to get was a film that went into the abstractions of weirdness. It does a bit, but it didn't enough. I thought we were going to be very much in her psychological kind of turmoil, and we weren't. We were asked to watch a woman acting turmoil, and I didn't feel the camera put us in her, or the film put us in her. She was striving to put the whole film in her, but I didn't get any sense. I didn't get any mucky sense of being within the kind of, in the way that, say, Scorsese and Schrader and all these these filmmakers create characters, or Daniel Day-Lewis has done, create characters that you are so in them. The film puts you in them. I wasn't in her, I was watching her, and she was acting her tits off, and I hate to say it, something has happened to her. I found her insufferable. I liked her. I thought, for example, there was a huge contrast between her performance and the performance of her wife. I thought her wife was really nuanced, was really in it.
Yeah,
you know what? I mean, everyone's going on about Cate Blanchett being... I'm sorry, this was a woman acting.
But I'm just confused, because even if you... I mean, I know what I thought when I came out of it. I'll tell you maybe at the end of this review, but I was looking up the reviews, because it is complicated. The plot is complicated if one chooses to follow the plot. But I mean, there's no need to.
It's clumsy. I thought the plot was clumsy.
Well, I mean, there are lots of ways. It was, I suppose, but I mean, I wanted to know why this and why that. And because I have far more difficulty with social media, I mean, I felt I probably missed the first text in the first 5 minutes. I can't possibly not think that that her actual conducting wasn't brilliant. Surely.
It was excruciating to watch.
She learned how to conduct. She conducts the actual orchestra.
Don't care. I found it utterly... I just found it cringeful.
I thought it was mesmerising.
Oh wow! Yeah, no. I mean, look, I'm totally accepting that I'm off the kind of script with this one. I'm off the page.
I thought the physicality of her performance was absolutely astonishing. That's all I can say. I mean, maybe, but I mean, it was no more amazing than a conductor watching a symphony being conducted by a conductor. And I suppose for me, it doesn't interest me that much. A conductor fucking flying their arms all over the place. Where she's like the bit in the trailer that we saw, where she's starting to do it, and then the music comes in as she does it.
Where I thought she was good, where I did genuinely think she was best, was at the point that the social media stuff was coming out and the look of fear. I felt if we chopped an entire hour out and chopped 20 minutes out of that insufferable opening scene, of which everything she said was interesting, but not in a movie. Everything she was saying was of interest and thought-provoking and philosophical. But no, sorry, not in a movie. Not in a movie. Get that information through whilst it's moving and in other scenes. I thought it was really lazy. Directorially, I thought it was really lazy.
What did you think then of the fact that he chose to put the credits at the beginning?
What a wanker.
I thought, because they have so many problems with the screening, I thought, they've let me into the wrong film.
No, it's funny you should say that, actually, because when I saw that, I thought, and then I thought, oh, God. I thought, in retrospect...
I bet you knew what you were getting then.
I didn't want to go that route, because I was really invested in a darkly psychological... psychotherapized, kind of dark and twisted, hallucinogenic. The trailer really sold that to me. That wonderful shot of her breathing. There's a photograph of her breathing sort of cigarette smoke out. I thought we were going to really be put in her, and people are saying we did. I'm saying for me, I absolutely wasn't. I found her performance alienating. I found it shallow. I found it two-dimensional. I found it so utterly pretentious. I mean, I feel so strongly about it. I came out and I was like, I'm fucking outraged by that.
Oh my God.
I can't believe people have been sold something that isn't what it is.
Do you know what I came out thinking?
What?
I came out thinking, I know I'm an exaggerator in life and my words generally, but this isn't exaggeration, thinking, and I'm like crying out, thinking, thank God I haven't died before I saw that film.
Wow.
That was an amazing film.
Wow, God, that's so contrasting. I came out wishing I died.
And I mean, I honestly thought that. I thought, my God, that is the sort of thing that makes film. And obviously you didn't think this, but I did. I thought that makes this craft of it, the skill of it. And I thought she was one skill, and I thought obviously I don't know the ins and outs of the directors like you do, but I thought he did a fine job for me. Wow. I mean, she was busy doing her stuff in front of the camera, and what he was doing was enough for me.
Having
said that, there were lots of long years and lots of things that I thought, all the subcast, all of those women I know from other things, and they're all good, and they were given nothing to do. And
I thought all the supporting cast, the supporting cast of all the women I thought were great. I thought the lead
all the haunting. You see, I could have been very critical of all the haunting bit where she was running across,
Oh my god! The moment where she runs and looks at a poster with her face crossed out, it was awful.
Her first girlfriend, the one they were talking about, had left that. But,
it was so obvious. She's running along a fucking thing. She sees and it wasn't even presented as a sort of poetic thing, like in Happy Valley, where Sarah Lancashire saw her daughter who was there. That was done very well. But I wasn't even invited to think, oh well, she wouldn't have literally run down a tunnel and seen a poster of her face wiped out.
But by that point of the film, it was getting very sort of messy. It's the word leading or illusion from one shot to another, so you never knew quite whether she was in the jungle or running down a corridor or what she was doing.
And then she went back to her home. I found her relationship with the daughter was utterly... It lacked, and when I say depth, I don't clearly that the issue there was about the connection or not connection. And I thought again they had a really rich opportunity with the daughter to thread in her humanity more. And I think there was an aspect of trying that, but it just didn't provide any complexity to her portrait. I quite liked her teacher, the lunch scenes with the teacher. I thought he was brilliant. The old guy at the meals.
Yeah. I don't know anything about him. I couldn't find anything in all the reviews about him.
Mark Strong with the most ridiculous wig I've ever seen in my life.
That guy?
Mark Strong.
Oh, Mark Strong.
I mean, he looked like Harold Pinter.
He did, didn't he? I thought
this is Harold Pinter.
I could not believe it was Mark Strong. I was so shocked and staggered when I realised it was.
So the thing,
you see, his part was underwritten too. I mean, you had to absolutely love her and everything she did, or the whole film was a mistake.
Well, I just want to give you a quote by a conductor called Marin Alsop. I don't know if you've seen her.
She's the one that she referred to. Marin Alsop, saying that the whole film was about her.
Yeah, well, she's the lesbian conductor who says, I was offended as a woman, I was offended as a conductor, I was offended as a lesbian. To have the opportunity to portray a woman in that role and to make her an #MeToo abuser was heartbreaking to witness. I entirely agree with her.
Well, it was a very mild attempt at even showing her as an abuser. I mean,
no, I know, but there. Okay, so you've just said the thing. The strength of this film pivots around her fall from grace. I thought if we were having a kind of a talent, a fame, an ego, not just an ego that's lacking justification, but she has huge self-worth from her huge achievements. She's hugely talented, and you're then seeing her fall. The fall lasted for 15 minutes at the end of turgid shit.
Yeah, but the fall, we were only at the beginning of her fall. Yeah, it was only interested in showing us that just she'd mishandled the whole thing and she was starting to go. I mean, I'm just absolutely fascinated because we often agree, don't we? We often agree.
Absolutely.
And we've so read this differently.
No, I mean, look, and Popcorn Junkies watchers and everything. Look, lots of our watchers and listeners, have seen this film. Will be desperately waiting for us to review it. This is not coming from a place of me not getting, understanding, or wanting films that are complex with ideas and what have you. I went into this expecting something. I think this is a disappointment of expectation. I went in thinking it was going to be a much more intimate cinematic exploration of a woman's conflict and demise and what have you. And I was shocked and surprised that the thing that hamstrung me so early in this, and I wasn't expecting it, was I did not believe her for a bit. I found her overacting. I found her hammy. I found her... I absolutely disliked her performance. I thought she was so mannered. And the character was mannered, but it was too much.
Yeah, well, yeah, okay. I don't know what to say to that.
I love the fact that you love it, and I love, that's what I love about films, is that you can get such different responses.
Exactly. I mean, it was so weird as well, because this little trickle of the word pretentious, which I never like using because it's overused.
I hate using it. You know I do. I hate it.
I know you do. But then that was hovering in the background in the first interview scene. And then as she sort of took hold, I felt in my judgment of it that she'd taken hold of the thing. I was as fascinated as if I just met the real life person.
Right, okay.
Directorial wise, I'm sure, I mean, your view would be so, it's the fact that you hated her so much that I'm amazed at.
Well, it's not even that I hated her. I could have really grappled with the complexity of the character. I personally don't think it was very well written. I don't think it was very well structured. I think going back to your thing where you always talk about rhythm, I thought ironically its rhythm, given it's about music, was diabolical.
Yeah, it was. There were lots of things about it that I thought were sort of unfinished almost. It was as if bits of it were to the greater service of showing what an amazing person she was. But because I was buying all that, I didn't mind that. So in the end, after the 50 millionth shot of her with her arms in the air and bending down and tossing her hair, I could have gone in for another 2 hours of that. She totally.
I mean, for example, the moment she rugby tackled the conductor off his podium, that was as ludicrous to me as seeing the poster under the subway. It was just ludicrous.
Well, I do think myself that by the time she was running through all those things, and she follows the girl with the teddy, I mean, I myself think he'd lost control of the film by then.
He'd lost control of her. I think he was in awe of her. I think the director was in awe of her. And given she was the executive producer, she probably said, unless you let me do this, I'm pulling the money.
Then I want to run down that street again with the lighting doing this. I don't care what you say.
And having had dinner with that dear Allan Corduner, I wanted to reach into that screen and help him out because he was given nothing to work with.
No, he wasn't. And I mean, I did. I mean, he was on. He had 2 appearances, didn't he?
Yeah. And I just thought, again, even the scene where she lets him go, it was so unsophisticated in any way. There was.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with that.
There was and I think they could have, ironically, what they needed to do was film, believe it or not, more with Cate Blanchett, but more with her introspection and her sort of stress and worry that the edges of her achievements were being nibbled at. I didn't get that sense from her at all. I thought it was, as I say, I think there were 10 minutes which I thought were good, which was just prior to the absolute moment where she was in Vietnam conducting some lunacy.
I mean, it's a very difficult one for me to even say because it's so funny. This has gone so not how I thought it would, because I thought you would be critical of the fact that I was, in Blonde, how I just couldn't accept it at all. And I thought you'd say, Mum, I'm amazed you can accept that, you liked her and she's playing an abuser. And the reason for that was because I felt he dealt with the whole idea. He wasn't interested in the abuse being an abusive thing. It was to do with power. And far, far, far less to do with sex, as we all know.
No, I agree. It's so weird. When I think about it, I just feel so many gaps. Gaps in the way in which he painted her portrait. It's so incomplete. I feel that there are so many aspects of trauma and trouble and interiority and conflict that I just didn't get. I just want to say something also about the pretentious thing. I have railed against many people in our family and people that we've known who've used the word pretentious about anything in which you serve to kind of analyse it in any way at all. Or, that things go a bit deeper than just the surface. I live for that stuff. Many of the films that I love, people would say that's really pretentious. I would argue I like pretentious films. That's why this so starkly stood out to me. Because I like classical music. I like all the composers. I can be drawn into this world, because I think what they're saying is the reason it's bombed at the box office, it's a rarefied niche world that isn't going to appeal to many people. I don't mind that even. I thought, okay, well, that's why this is going to be interesting. Like ballet and Black Swan. Not everyone's into ballet. And so I bought into that. And then when I got into it, I was so spectacular. It was a visceral response to her performance. It was...
Her performance.
It was awful.
You being madder with the director than her, because we had that long sort of thing of all the names coming up, which was obviously his ploy for doing something, making his statement about the way that things are normally shown. Then he gave us a half an hour thing of interview that was an actual interview that we knew nothing about.
Which would have been interesting if we paid to go and see at the Royal Festival Hall. That would have been fascinating to listen to at the Royal Festival Hall, not as the first scene in a movie.
Yeah, well, exactly, but yeah, I don't, yeah.
You're flummoxed.
Well, yeah. I mean, I can see that there was could be. I mean, of course, I'm not saying could be, because if you think there was far more directorial sort of missteps than I thought the editing was good too. Did you not think the editing was good? Those scenes where she's actually conducting the orchestra, and the looks between the orchestra. I
Well,
thought
they
the
were
way
right.
he handled those orchestra scenes were really good.
Oh, yeah, see, I didn't. I found them quite flat. You know, I'm not suggesting for a minute that my reading of it is right. It's purely personal. I do sometimes get worried that that the critics sort of think this has to be good because of the ingredients that have gone into it. Todd Field hasn't made a film for however many years. His films have done very well at the Oscars in the past. Cate Blanchett, she hasn't had a role like this, which is all about her, and it's about intense, Yeah, well, it is all of those things. But I mean, maybe I'm the only one saying this film needed to be more intense. We needed, and I think the solution is we needed to go into Cate Blanchett's character more deeply and more abstractly and more impressionistically and, in a sense, more menacingly, because I felt the sense. I didn't feel any sense of. I wanted to feel menace from her, and I didn't.
Yeah, well, I think he was in a double bind there, because unless he was going to pursue the whole thing of she's a predator, he couldn't show at all that she was menacing. It all had to be this airy-fairy stuff of, you're right,
But
in a way.
that's where he lost the momentum. But that's where he lost the dramatic momentum, because he
Yeah.
took her so far, but couldn't take her
He
any further.
wanted his cake and eat it in that respect.
Very
He wanted
true.
it to be, well, yeah, I don't know whether he wanted it, but the story was about somebody who misused her power. But there is no way that he was going to sort of sit down in front of us and say that, you know, she was, you know, like men can be or anything.
Well, I think in a weird way. I mean, I don't want to talk about the film that should have been made, but in a weird way, the misstep that perhaps he took was to have her behaviour acknowledged and realised by the authorities, and what it should have been was about her getting away with it and about the trauma of that and how it started.
Well, she had got away
No,
with it.
I know, but continue to have got away with it. And so the erosion of self would have been her own sort of realisation that she has this awful these control issues. And because at the point that it was put in front of a board and then she had to go and try and work for someone else, you're right, he pulled his punches. It wasn't enough of one thing and it wasn't enough of the other.
Wasn't brave enough to go with. And maybe, again, it's interesting that you say probably it was the actor sort of wielding the more power than she probably had, because she wouldn't have wanted it to go any further than it went. It went just far enough in terms of sort of them being able to say, this is a woman who had too much power in this small world, without ever sort of referring to actually, you know, some sort of sexual mishap. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
I mean, one of the very few people who hated it in all this huge sort of thing of Rotten Tomatoes things said, oh my God, save me from Cate Blanchett doing Meryl Streep.
Oh, God. Well, yeah, I mean, she
hated it. He hated it.
Oh, right. Well, I feel we've got to that point. I've got to that point. Nightmare Alley, I found her intolerable. Something else she was in. I just find her, and I used to love her. I think she looks great.
Really? She wasn't in Nightmare Alley.
Yeah, she was. She was the woman that wooed Bradley Cooper at the end.
Was. Oh, I've forgotten.
It's like I felt she'd walked straight off that set onto this set. She was just identical, and I think it's a problem. I think it's a fear of direction. I think directors are too scared to tell her what to do because she's an artiste.
She comes from a musical family, and I don't know if you remember me saying, but she was very, very recently. She was on Desert Island Discs, and I have to say her musical choices were the most original I've ever heard in my life. Right. I mean, they were different. They were different to everything else.
Were they pretentious by any chance?
Well, you could actually call them. I was more interested because they played the same things over and over again on that. She likes German fluently. She learned conducting fluently.
Oh, she sounds more and more insufferable the more you talk about her. I can't bear it. I used to love her, and now I can't. I'm going to avoid her next film.
This is the crunch. What are you going to give it?
Right, okay, I'm going to give my score. I'm going to give it. This is really hard. Because, you know, when we were talking about the films that disappointed us last year, this was a crushing disappointment.
Oh my God.
I pretty much hated everything in it. I didn't think any of the you know, it's directorially beyond average. So this championing him as a nuanced director that I'm seeing, I'm sorry, it's just not true. The camera work they've got, you know, I think the camera work is obviously good. It's a good DOP, you know, but again, the tones and the colours I just found added somehow. Even the tones and colours of the footage and the sets were pretentious. It was like I was watching a Farrow and Ball advert. It was just like, oh, for fuck's sake. And there were moments of sheer awful comedy. Like even the scene where she did throw the sort of gender fluid boy out. I thought it was like a scene from Fame, the series, not the film. And the scene with her running under the thing. You know, there were many moments which, when you actually unpack the scenes, I thought, this is really weak. This is really weak. So what would I give it? Oh, this is really hard.
You didn't like the music at all?
No, and the soundtrack outside of the pieces she was performing is by the same composer as Joker, but I was straining to hear it.
Yeah, but what about the actual pieces that they
Oh no,
used?
I said. Well, and the other thing about this is I know all those pieces very well.
Yeah.
I love them all. I've listened to them many times. I like them.
Yeah, okay.
I like them. I would have to give this 10 out of 100.
Oh my God!
It's a stinker for me.
Sorry, I've suddenly got coffee. I'd have to give it something like about over 90.
Wow, God, this is a great contrast.
Let me give it 90. I'll stop at 90 because there were some things I thought wrong with it, but there's nothing wrong with her for me at all.
Wow. I came out and thought I'll never get that 2.5 hours back.
And I thought, thank God I didn't die yesterday.
Well, I nearly did die.